Hello and welcome to episode 16 of Impacted. I'm your host Bison, and this week I'm joined by none other than the First Lady of Total Nonstop IMPACT, ALICIA. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Yes, I'm really well, thank you, and I'm really pleased that you decided to join us for this episode.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No problem. And just in case any of the UK guys possibly don't know who ALICIA is, she is the newest host of the weekly flagship show that airs in the US live 30 minutes after the show, the Impact weekly show airs in the US. And I'm really pleased to welcome her onto the show today. And I believe that we're going to be talking about one of her favourite subjects, because I know that she's a huge fan of this faction. So do you want to tell the listeners who we're going to be talking about this week then, ALICIA?
Oh, we're going to be getting into an interesting discussion about OVE.
Thumbs up?
Thumbs down.
Okay, so this, as probably a lot of my listeners or impacted fans are already aware, I am a big fan of OVE. Recently on Bison Talks Impact, I did do a great interview with the legendary Jake Crist, and I was lucky enough to do a little promo with him as well, so that was pretty cool. So
that was great.
So if any of you guys out there haven't caught that interview with Dave, it's on the TNI site, so don't forget to head over there on the YouTube site. Head over there and check it out. It was a really cool interview, and I've got to be honest, it's probably one of my favourite ones so far. He's a great guy. He's very candid in his in what he talks about, and he's obviously very passionate about life and wrestling as well, and what he's going to do in his life. And I think it's definitely well worth a listen. So don't forget to head over. And by the way, when you're over there, hit the sub and smash the bell, because then you'll never miss a listen. But there you go. Those are the extra stuff. And so let's talk about OVE. Now, who are OVE? That's the thing. This is the big question. Who are OVE? So OVE originated on Impact TV with Dave and Jake Crist as a tag team, later joined by Sami Callihan, who was perceived to be the leader, maybe more of a mouthpiece, and eventually Madman Fulton joined the fold as well. Now, this faction really got over on Impact in a huge way, especially once Sami came on board or came onto the scene with cutting some of his incredible backstage promos, and as a group becoming probably the biggest heel faction in the promotion to date. Now, do you agree with that, ALICIA?
I agree, absolutely. There were some bad dudes for a long time.
Exactly, they are scummy dudes. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're full of scumminess.
Bunch of scumbags.
That's exactly it. That's why we love them. Now, I know that you've been a fan of the Crist brothers, particularly, and Sami too, obviously, since before they arrived on Impact. So, can you fill us in on where you came across them and what you kind of, I don't know, what really made you sort of kind of fall in love with the guys?
Well, originally, I discovered Sami Callihan first. I believe it was about 2013 when I stumbled across an internet match of him versus Jessica Havoc. And around the time I had stopped watching wrestling altogether, wasn't really into what the product was on TV. I mean, I was watching Impact, but didn't really know much about the indies so much recent as I did in the past. And so I watched their match, and something about the energy that they put into that really captivated me and welcomed me back, like just kind of pulled me in by my hair and introduced me back to wrestling. That was in CZW. And then about a couple of years later, I feel like is when I came across the Crist brothers, because they had a faction all together back in the day called OI4K. Ohio is for killers.
Yeah. It's funny enough, I spoke to Dave about that, because as far as what Dave was saying was that the Ohio for Killers is actually, he actually owns the rights to that. Mm-hmm. So what he was saying was originally they wanted them to bring that to Impact, but he was like, you know what, no, I think we need to do something different. So it's interesting you bring that up, because I think that is a very cool name for a faction, to be honest.
Oh, it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very cool.
absolutely. And what they represented was awesome. I think at the time when I realized what their faction was, it was Sami, Dave, Jake, and Nevaeh.
Yeah.
And so that was great. I thought they just had a really interesting look about them. They were doing great moves in the ring, and everything about them was just very captivating.
Yeah, I mean they're kind of like a hybrid, aren't they? Because they're very good. Their in-ring skill is incredible, but and they can sort of kind of mix it up between the sort of kind of high flying and a more stronger kind of heavy hitting style. But at the same time, they're all about their character, aren't they?
Yes, yeah, and they're all different personalities if you think about it. Even when they're all in the same group, they might dress alike, but they all bring something different to the table.
Definitely, I totally agree with that. So let's talk about when they arrived on Impact back in August 2017. It was at Destination X.
Hmm.
They debuted in a winning effort against Jason Cade and Zachary Wentz. Now, for me, this match was pretty good, and it really cemented from the minute they sort of kind of came on the entrance ramp. Now, because I mean, bearing in mind, I'd never seen these guys before. This is the very first time that I'd seen them. Because I don't get the opportunity to see, some of the American indies or anything like that. I
Right.
might get to see a thing on YouTube, and generally, I start to look at stuff like that if I come across someone on Impact or a promotion that I generally follow and go, oh, I might look into them, and then I sort of kind of go back and find out a bit more about them. But I was really impressed at the way that they sort of kind of came in. They had a presence about themselves, and straight away, I felt that there was something special here. I thought, these guys they've got it. And what do you think about their initial introduction to Impact TV?
Well, having been a fan, prior to them debuting, their look was very different. They were in spandex and full of guy liner.
Okay.
But they left quite an impression. It's like you could just tell by looking at them that they were bringing something new to the company. And at the time, it was when the company was just kind of so-so. People were in and out faster than you can blink. So, yeah, they came in with a punch.
Yeah, they certainly made a big difference, and I think they started to make people's heads turn a little bit, because they were saying, okay, so this is a direction that maybe they're going to go, and I think it did definitely make a big difference. Now, obviously, that was a winning match, and actually, that was one of the first times we saw Zach Vance as well.
Yes,
So,
yes.
and obviously later on he ended up debuting more, as a Rascal. But at that time he was just Zachary Wentz at that time in a random tag match to
Hmm.
lose, basically.
Yeah, basically.
And yeah, basically to job. And at that moment, I think they did. I mean, to be fair, Jason and Zach, I thought actually had a good go. You know what I mean? It wasn't like OVE coming in there and they were just going to like walk all over them. They gave them a match,
Oh, yeah.
and I think it showcased some of the good stuff that those guys could do. So what came next? I don't think anyone expected, because literally within days, um, yeah, literally within days, they took on Lax for the GFW tag titles, and they won to become the GFW tag champs. Now, I don't think anyone expected that, did they?
No, no, it did definitely come out of nowhere,
Yeah, it was a big
especially for
surprise.
being such a new team.
Exactly. So literally, like within days of their debut, they're winning the GFW titles, because obviously at that time it was still GFW.
Hmm.
Now, during their reign, obviously the titles then reverted to the Impact Tag World Championship, or World Title, which of course, eventually led to LAX demanding a rematch in the October, and the rematch to be held at BFG. And of course, that would be the 51-50 street match. Now, that was an outstanding hardcore match. Do you remember too much about it?
It's been I've seen so many matches since. It's a little bit blurry, but if I remember correctly, it was really good.
Yeah, I mean there was some crazy stuff going on, and of course, that then led to Sami Callihan's debut, because he came in at the end, with the I think he did a pile driver to Ortiz through the table, I believe. Hang on, let me have a look at my notes. Yes, through the table, which then obviously led to the OVE victory. So, and then they went on to continue the onslaught to LAX, which then obviously really cemented them as a heel faction as such. Backstage afterwards, it was if you remember, it was just an all-out. Basically, it was an all-out brawl, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. It's definitely around that time they were putting on some really good television.
Oh, there was some insane stuff going on, absolutely insane stuff going on, and I just think it was an incredible way to bring Sami in as well, because that was when he, I mean, the way he sort of kind of like storms down the ramp, doesn't he, with his grimace on his face, and he's about to seriously kick someone's ass or whatever. It's it was a great way to bring Sami on into Impact. And of course, at the end of the day, we then move forward slightly, because that was all now towards the end of that year, and then we moved forward slightly into January 2018, and we saw OVE lose the tag titles to LAX. I always call them LAX, but it's LAX. Ending the reign, which was 168 days, and I just think, that's when we really saw the team of OVE become a fully fledged faction, as Sami Callihan, as the sort of kind of self-appointed leader of the team, would that was kind of the way it seemed, because he was kind of being the mouthpiece, wasn't he? Up until that point, he was just kind of there to back up the boys, if that makes sense. But once obviously they lost those titles, then he became the leader of the faction. Do you think that's right? You think that's sort of kind of where that all started to stem from?
Yeah, I would agree that would be around the time. I mean, I'm sure they tried to implicate it, when he first stepped in, but honestly, I always felt like, Dave was kind of the leader, and, Sami was the mouthpiece, as you're saying.
Yeah. So I think it was kind of, it was kind of, I don't know, it was implied prior to that, but I think, once they lost those titles, it was almost like, right, okay, I'm stepping in now, because you obviously need me to, help you set the record straight. We need to take this to the next level. We need to get to the scummiest point possible. We need to lie, cheat, steal, whatever it takes is what we need to do to win. And that's pretty much the attitude we got from there. Now, of course, the feud then really started to amp up, and we ended up with the barbed wire massacre match.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts on that insanity?
Well, that was quite a match. I mean, we hadn't seen something like that on Impact Television in quite a while. And it was every bit as brutal. Like, those guys put in 110% for that. And, we even got a Masada spot, which was great. Not sure if you know who that is, but
Yes. Yeah. No, it was. That was one of my favourite matches of that year, because again, like you said, you'd never see something like that on any other mainstream wrestling promotion, would you? You just, with international, you just wouldn't see that kind of match. I think they played it safe in a sense that, they very much looked after each other. When I was talking to Dave, we talked about this match, and he said, like, the reality of that was that it's definitely nowhere near the worst match that he's ever competed in.
Yeah.
And he said that it was very important that obviously LAX, Santana Ortiz and themselves really trusted each other to ensure that, nobody got severely hurt. Because let's face it, the ropes were barbed wire, and they were really barbed wire. The boards were exposed, which may be a bit of a mistake, because if I remember rightly, they were moving around, weren't they? And they were creating potential holes. There was a possibility at points that, feet and ankles could have ended up going through, the spaces in between the boards. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
and I think that in turn possibly made the match a little bit less intense of what it could have been. I mean, it could have been even more intense. I think they should have thought about that, in a sense of, when they exposed everything, that maybe they should have found a way of sort of kind of strapping the boards together so they didn't move apart. And I think what that did was it sort of kind of slowed it down a little bit. And then they're also kind of very aware that they had to be careful where they were putting their feet, and so there wasn't, so it wasn't quite as spontaneous as I think it could have been. But regardless of any of that, it just showed what great professionals they were to ensure that when they left that match, they didn't necessarily, none of them, I don't believe, were seriously injured in any way. I was, funny enough, I had the conversation with Dave. It was around this time when Dave actually got injured. But I thought it was that match when he got injured. He hurt his back. But he confirmed that it wasn't that match. It was a match later on at Wrestling Revolver.
Yeah.
I think it was like within weeks of that going on. Because, I mean, during literally not long after that was when we started to see a lot less of Dave, a lot more of Jake. Because obviously, for obvious reasons, he was unable to wrestle at that time because he had a back injury. Obviously, they kept that quiet, and they just played it all into the story. So I mean, effectively, that match lacks, obviously, LAX. I think they won. Am I right in thinking? I can't remember. It ended the feud, and then, and LAX won, didn't they?
I thought it was OVE. Uh-oh. Maybe we're I'm just being biased and wanting to remember history different. Maybe that's what it is.
I'm pretty sure LAX won that one and ended that feud. Because then what came after that was where we, I mean, obviously Sami was a bit annoyed. We then saw feuds with Rich Swann. That sort of kind of started to build up, and then you saw Dave and Jake take a little bit more of a back seat at that moment for a little while we had all of that going on.
Sorry to interrupt you, but did the Eddie Edwards feud happen right after LAX, or was Swann before that?
You know what?
Because you remember they were doing all those matches where, like, kind of cinematic matches where they were going out to the Ohio compound and stuff like that. Do you remember?
That's true. I think you're right. I think it was. I think the Eddie Edwards stuff was. Yes, it was the Eddie Edwards stuff then. That then led into the cinematic stuff. Funny enough, I should have remembered that, because today I was watching one of those matches. It came up on. I think it came up on Twitter. And no, it wasn't on Twitter. Where was it? It might have been on Facebook. It came up in one of the groups I was in. And I was actually watching that, but the one where Eddie was like slamming the wood or whatever it was in scrapping Sami's head, and the blood was all down his face and everything. Yeah. That was incredible. That again.
It was great. Ahead of its time.
Definitely. So, and then obviously all of that led into the Rich Swann storyline, which was, basically, you owe me type scenario. You've got a history, we've got a history together. I looked after you. You should be thanking me, because you wouldn't be where you are now if it weren't for me, and all that kind of stuff. They were trying to guilt trip Rich into becoming a member of OVE. So there was that storyline that was going on, which I thought that was really good. And actually, what that showed more to me than anything else was that a more serious side to Rich, and really showed that he's quite versatile, because obviously from Rich Swann's point of view, he's the party guy, and he's the let's get up
Mr.
and
Fun
dance
Loving
and
Good Time, yeah.
have a good time and have fun. So but that showed a more serious side to Rich, which we hadn't seen before on Impact. And actually, on his previous runs in WWE, I don't think he'd seen that side of him either. So I think it was quite good to see how versatile Rich can be. If you want to put him into a serious kind of storyline where he has to really dig deep, he can do it, and he proved.
Oh, he'll nail it.
He proved how versatile he was, and that's the thing, and that there's kind of like a running theme through Impact and OBE and Sami, that if you want to show other wrestlers or other factions in a positive light, these guys are happy to do that.
Right.
And as much as we sort of kind of get upset at times if they're not winning or whatever, the bottom line is, that I think that makes them true wrestling professionals, because they are willing to take the fall if need be. And the reality is, at the end of the day, you have to, in a story, you've got to lose it at some point. Otherwise, what is the reason to carry on? You've got to have a reason to fight. And if you constantly win, what's the point? So it was that time that all of that was going on. We also saw the introduction of obviously the monster Madman Fulton, and obviously he become the newest member to the faction. So there was so Madman was introduced at that point. And had you seen Madman Fulton prior to him turning up on Impact, or is this a new one for you?
He was new to me. Again, I wasn't watching NXT when he was apparently there. So again, he was absolutely new to me. Left a good impression though. That dude's a beast.
He's massive, isn't he? He's a I'm not sure his exact height. I'm not sure what his height is billed at, but I mean he's got to be at least 6'6", 6'7". I mean, I remember when I was at the New York tapings, I had a group photograph with OVE and myself there on the stage, and I remember walking up. Now, I mean, I'm 5'11", so I'm not short, but I'm not a tall dude. But he was towering above me. He was massive,
Yeah.
and he's one ginormous fella. So and you can see why they wanted to bring him in, and I think his the look that they brought in with him as well, I think it fit the faction really, really well. And it was kind of like, I think it fits Sami really well with the whole kind of like, pulling in. It's a bit like Frankenstein's monster, isn't it? He's sort of kind of, he's
That was
leading
some
him.
of the best work.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a massive, massive man, and an incredible asset, obviously, to the faction. So now, what we started to see at this point now was Sami kind of start. He was having quite a few incredible matches, but for me, one of his best matches of that year was definitely at Slammiversary against Tessa Blanchard. Now, she was wearing all gold and brought out a gold baseball bat and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there was an interesting lead into that from a storyline point of view, but the actual match itself, I think, it's got to be one of the matches of that year. I
agree.
I think it might even have won match of the year or something later on. That I'm not sure. I can't remember. But again, and it really, and again, what we talk about, Sami's not afraid to help, or even Dave or whoever, OVE in general, they're not afraid to help elevate other members of the roster. Now, at this point, they were clearly, and off air, we talked about the whole the way Impact do this kind of slow burn thing, and it just sort of kind of builds, and sometimes you don't even realize where these things kind of originate from, but it's kind of there, and then when they start pushing that, you then start to think, well, okay, yeah, no, this makes sense, but that's because they've been already planting those seeds, haven't they? Like,
Oh
several
yeah.
months prior to pushing the story. So, but leading up to that, we saw that Sami was quite willing to get in there, do the intergender, as they were calling it at the time, and really, showcase how good Tessa could be.
Yeah.
And I think there is no one better than Sami for that, And I think they picked the right, in terms of, if you're going to push this kind of male female thing, you know, to make it at least semi-realistic. Although I've got an argument for this, because at the end of the day, like Ronda Rousey, for instance, is not a big girl, right? But she could kick shit out of me, right? So you know what I mean. So I don't kind of
She
have
kicked the
this.
shit out of everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't kind of have this thing of, this male and female, oh, it was so unrealistic that, a woman couldn't, knock a bloke
It's
down. Rubbish.
not unrealistic at all.
It's not unrealistic at all. Um, so, um, but what they did was, if you look at them in the ring, the reality is they're. I mean, I think Sami's probably about an inch or so taller than Tessa, so it's not huge. Not a huge
Mm,
difference in height. Okay, Sami is a little bit thicker than her, but he's not like ginormously stacked or
right,
anything.
right.
So I think that putting them two together, when you saw them actually face to face in the ring, you didn't get this sense of towering man over a tiny woman. This is totally
Exactly.
unrealistic feel. Um,
It felt very equal.
yes, that's it. I think that's probably what I'm trying to say in my ridiculously long-winded way.
It doesn't.
That yeah, it felt realistic. It felt equal. It felt like, this could happen. And I thought the match was just outstanding. I mean,
They gave
just
it
one of
their all, their blood, sweat, and tears.
everything. They told an incredible story in the ring, and even to the point, where, I mean, when he finally wins, it's kind of like you didn't know at that point if he was going to win. You really didn't, what I mean, until that moment when he finally, you get the 1, 2, 3. You just didn't know. And that is the beauty of how well Sami can tell a story in the ring. And when you put him in with someone who's equally good at doing that, the result is just magical. It's just an incredible match.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Perfection.
yeah, it was. It was absolutely perfection, and everybody raved about it. Everyone online was raving about it. It was a great match. Now, once that kind of happened, I mean, obviously it didn't die a death. There was still some stuff kind of simmering in the background with regards to Tessa, but we then saw Jake Crist become the X Division champion by defeating Rich Swann. Now that was in the July of 2019, and for me, I thought Jake was a really good X Division champion. Um, you know, and for me, and obviously this is when we started to see the new and improved golden draw, um,
Uh,
which was really good. I've put something here a bit in my notes a little bit later on to sort of kind of talk about the promo stuff, but this is kind of where we started to see, or a little bit before this actually, building before he started to call himself the golden draw, but a little bit before that we started to see the whole kind of mimicking Sami, uh, in promos. Do you remember that stuff where he was sort of kind of almost like following everything that Sami said and trying to like copy the way that he was acting and all that kind of stuff? Do you remember all that?
I do remember that, and I always laughed so hard because he was even mouthing and mimicking things Sammy wasn't even saying. Like, he was just putting his all into just trying to uh seem like Sammy. It was just really funny.
Exactly. He was just trying to be. He was just trying to be Sammy, and I thought it was. I thought that was. I thought that was really cool. and obviously they knew that this was going to lead to a potential, X Division run. So, once he became the X Division champion, literally within days, he suddenly become the big-headed golden draw. And for me, I thought it was brilliant. With the obviously the big fluffy blonde hair and and the gold sort of kind of bits was going on to his costume, and I thought that was really good. But of course, he stayed the champion then right the way up to Bound for Glory. We saw some great matches from Jake, and proved that he was a very worthy X Division champion. And see, this is something else I find interesting as well, is that a lot of people forget, is in the time that the OVE have been a faction, they've been tag champs. One member has held the X Division title, and of course, as we talk about later, Sami's been the world title holder. So in reality, they've actually been incredibly successful. So I think that and to a degree, it's the same with anything. A faction or a gimmick and someone can only last so long. And what you don't want to do is, like keep pushing that kind of same thing, keep it going until literally it just dies.
Right.
What I like about the way that they've worked the OVE gimmick is, they created this gimmick, they've pushed it, they've given it everything they possibly can. It's had storyline after storyline. They've constantly had a story going on. Something's constantly been happening, probably for like 2.5 years, right? So now, and they've held the titles that, like I say, we just talked about. They've had the tag titles, they've had the X Division title, and Sami has held the world title. So as a faction, if you look at it that way, in the time that they've been around, they've actually been really, really successful. So
yeah.
So I think I just wish that people would be a little bit more. They'd look a little bit more back in the history and say, you know what, actually, they've done so much in the time that they've been there. They're almost out of things to do, which is probably why we're at the point that we're at now. Although it upsets people, maybe it is the time that it's sort of kind of moved on. When we just enjoy.
I agree.
Yeah. So we had all that going on, and of course we got to that Bound for Glory, and Ace obviously ends up winning the X Division title in I think it was a 5-way. Was it a 5? Yeah, it was a 5-way ladder match.
Yep.
Which of course included the current world champ Tessa Blanchard. But Ace Austin obviously ends up winning and going on his famous starts. That's the start of his famous Triple X Division run. So that's it. See, so that was really good. Now, I think what I want to do at this moment, so I want to touch a little bit. Yeah, I think there was a time I had. I want to talk about the promos a bit more, because the other thing as well was, although Dave was injured not long after that Barbara Massacre match, which at the time I thought it was that, but it turned out to be an indie show a couple of weeks or so later. They kept Dave around, and he had a really good role in the promo side of things, in the storytelling side of things. One of the things I thought was really good was his expressional stuff. So, for instance, is really, really subtle. So we were talking about the way Jake was kind of, almost morphing into the golden draw by, being that whole mimic and pretending that he's Sami and all that kind of stuff. But when all that stuff was going on, do you remember what Dave was doing?
Popping faces at everything Jake was doing. Like, I can't believe you're acting like that. Like, his expressions were genius.
Yes, and that's exactly. I just remember him sort of kind of going, like looking
like he
over
couldn't believe what was happening. He didn't recognize his brother, kind of.
what the hell? And some of that stuff that was going, he didn't necessarily say much, but he did so much with his face. And he was there, and he was a very big part of the faction and the promo and the gimmick and the ringside kind of like cheerleading squad or whatever you want to call it. He was always the first in the ring to sort of kind of try and do a scummy thing or whatever. He was there for the faction, and I think that speaks testaments for the fact that what Impact are also very good at doing is keeping people relevant. Now, I talked about when we did our Rosemary episode with Joeker, the very first one that we did with Rosemary. We spoke about the fact that when she got injured, because she had knee injury, didn't she? Had a really bad knee injury, which went on. It's gone on for quite a long time. But what they managed to do really, really well to keep her relevant, because they knew how popular she was, they kept the story stuff going. So even though she wasn't necessarily in the ring, she was always popping up on the show in some way or form.
Right.
You were never allowed to forget about her. And I think they did that with Dave.
Yes.
But in a more subtle way, because he was always there. He was always there, so you never really forgot about him. And actually, I think it took a good couple of months before people realized that he wasn't actually wrestling.
Yeah. Like, again, we talk about Impact doing things very subtly, and that is a prime example. I remember even, being a fan, and you notice these things, but you don't really think about it. And then after a while, I'm like, when is the last time he wrestled? Or like you start paying attention to when he was actually wrestling and how little he would actually tag in. And you know what I mean? And moves he was taking were quite different than what he was doing before the injury.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think at that time, nobody really knew what the injury was. He revealed to me on my interview that it was quite a severe back injury, that he's sustained. Well, I've suffered with back injuries over the years, and I can't imagine trying to wrestle with a back injury. I just couldn't. He must have, and he was still at least getting in there and doing something. So it was impressive to see that, and it was great to see that they were continually trying to make sure that he was relevant. They were continually making sure that we knew Dave was part of the faction, because they could quite easily say, well, if you can't get in the ring, mate, you might as well stay at home. You know what I mean? There's no point in coming out to a taping if you can't do anything.
They do that a lot. Yeah.
You could do that, but they didn't. They knew what they needed to do. They needed to keep him relevant, and that's what they did. And I think that is testament to Impact as well, and the way that he was being portrayed in those, his actual skill with the face and all that kind of stuff that was going on then really shone through and made him. In fact, some of those promos were the things that actually made me become quite a fan of him without actually seeing him in the ring that much, because I used to literally watch the promo and watch Dave and wait for his expressions and basically the way he was going to react to Jake really at that time, and what was going on. And he even did it to Sami as well, as if to say like, oh man, I don't fucking agree with this shit. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. I loved it.
Yeah. So it was good stuff. So I wanted to touch on that, which was interesting. So you still had him appearing in promos, etc., with the facial expressions. Now, moving on to BFG. Funny enough, BFG 2019, we saw the start of the Access TV era, and boy, it kicked off with Sami winning an incredible world title match in a cage against obviously the current champion at the time, Brian Cage. Now, Sami came out on top with that one after delivering several pile drivers. and I can't remember whether it was off the top rope, but it was certainly off. It was certainly off the ropes. The final sort of kind of pile driver, which finished him off. Was it off the top rope or was it off the second? I can't remember.
Geez, I believe it was the second.
Yeah, I think it might have
It's
been the
it's one
second.
of those things where it's like that was such an exciting match that like those small details just escape me because it was just so captivating.
But to do a pile driver off the ropes, I just thought was, I mean, again, you as I guess as a wrestler that's going to take that, Brian had to have full confidence that Sami was going to deliver that without breaking his neck. You know what
Oh,
I mean? So,
absolutely.
and that was, and that's a testament that, people are willing to do stuff like that. For me, one of the most impressive things that happened in the match was the way that Brian climbed up the cage and jumped in within like 10 seconds. Uh, do you remember that? Like, I
Yeah, it was
remember
like Wolverine.
yeah, I remember the commentary team were like, "Wow, what just happened?" Because he literally came in like you say, like Wolverine. He was in there like an like a bat out of hell, and he was gunning for Sami at that point. And of course, also leading up to this, we still had a lot of sort of kind of we'd had some backstage stuff, a lot of feudy stuff going on with regards to Tessa. Again, he was being a bit disrespectful, as you would expect the scumbaggy type character to be. And of course, Tessa was not going to let Sami, enjoy his moment becoming the world champion. And of course, she interrupted him straight off the bat. And yeah, faced off. They faced off in the cage, didn't they?
Oh yeah.
What were your thoughts of that when that happened?
Oh man, I mean, I knew it was necessary. It was more than likely going to happen, but it was one of those instances where it was like, damn it, Tessa, you really had to piss in his Cheerios and rain all over his parade. Like it, I again, I'm biased, so I always want to see my favorites have those moments that are uninterrupted. Understandably, I do know that they are necessary to happen, but a girl can be a little mad sometimes.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So I think it was sort of almost inevitable that that was going to happen. But at the end of the day, that's storytelling. But Sami walked away with the world title on his shoulder, and gained what I would say was probably well deserved, because I think in the time that he'd been there, at that moment he'd not won anything. He'd been up.
Yes.
I think he'd had an X Division title match, I think, which he didn't win. That was Rich, wasn't it? Might have been. I think I
Hmm.
think it was Rich, wasn't it? And then then Jake ended up winning that afterwards. But
Hmm.
yeah, so he didn't win that. There was a couple of other matches that he didn't win, including it might have been a world. Oh yeah, well he did win the world title match originally with Brian, did he? So he lost his world title match at the Bound for Glory at that time, which obviously then led to the first Access TV show being a cage match where he did win. And you know what? I think that was the right thing to do, because they clearly didn't want Sami to win at Bound for Glory because, yes, all right, it's a pain for you. Bound for Glory is great, wonderful, blah, blah, blah. But they needed something special to happen at the very first show on Access TV. So to put a cage match on with Sami then, and, the world title changing hands, um, there you go. There it is. Ready made. Ready made. So
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely. And of course, what we also saw was the production values and everything else improving. The real push for the red, the red and black that we've got now, which was again long. Yeah, I mean, we were waiting a long time for it to go back to that, weren't we? To be
Yeah.
fair, um, so that was welcome as well. So yeah, so that was absolutely fantastic, and like I was saying, I can imagine you were marking out like crazy to
Oh,
Sami winning.
absolutely. It was long
So
overdue.
I did. I mean, I did as well, because being a an OV fan myself, I don't know what it is. I'm just a massive fan of the whole um, heel thing, and the proper full on scumbags. I love it. You know, I think they're great.
He's the
It's
perfect heel.
Yeah, it's almost like if I was ever a wrestler, I'd want to be the bad guy. Like
Yeah.
I'd want to be
It seems more
scumbag,
fun.
lying and cheating and squirming my way to championships. That's what that would be me all over. So so obviously Tessa comes in and confronts. You know, we'd obviously had a little bit of stuff going on. We'd also had that previous main event, it's Slammiversary. So again, you know, a long-term kind of burn is going on. So Tessa turns up. We knew that there was obviously got to be something going on there. You know, we had then what did we get? So we had that going on. So we knew that was going to happen. Is then what we kind of got from that point on was pretty much all about Sami and Tessa. In all fairness, and the OVE boys were sort of more. You know, like the backing singers, I think, at that point, because it was pretty much everything was geared towards what was going on there. And obviously, we had like Tessa versus Jake, and there was all sorts, Fulton, and there was all sorts of stuff going on there to try and avoid, meeting up with Sami, and anyway, loads of stuff.
Yeah, they dragged that out.
There was just so much stuff going on. I mean, there's one thing you can say about OVEs. They're on TV every week. And I think if we were just sort of kind of mark down every single match and every single feud and every single thing that they did, we'd be here all night. So, we've got to try and gloss through some of it. So I apologise to the listeners at the moment. If we've glossed over anything that you think we should be talking about, then, by all means, leave us a comment. Because what I do love doing is going through the comments when this stuff goes out, and if anyone's got anything anything that they want to add, I'll happily discuss it on there. And I'm sure that ALICIA will do the same when this goes out. We can all talk about it. We can all add our pennies worth in. That's what the comments are for. So make sure that you do leave us a comment. If there's anything you want to talk about, we would love to hear from you, wouldn't we?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we move on. So like I say, we're still seeing some great promo stuff going on. We saw loads of stuff heading up to the New York tapings. I was at the New York tapings, so I was lucky enough to see some of the stuff that went on there. There was a great in-ring promo from Sami, actually, at those tapings. I don't know if you remember it. He literally just came out, stood in the middle of the ring, and did a promo for about 15 minutes. About how we should all be, he's the hero in the story because he's the one saying, I'm happy to wrestle her and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
It's almost more like a sort of kind of anti-hero type role he was taking on, a bit like Batman, I guess. But so that was all sort of kind of going on at the time. We then had that incredible street fight in the middle of New York City, which was just it was just incredible. And like, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe that has the most YouTube views of any video that they've put up on YouTube, I believe.
I wouldn't be surprised. That was quite a spectacle.
It's like well over like 1,500,000 views or something crazy like that. It's had a ridiculous amount of views, and it created a massive frenzy on social media. I mean, I don't know. Do you remember all of that going on? I mean, it's only November last year, so it's not.
At the time, I wasn't on Twitter, so I'm not really aware that there was a lot being said about it, other than what I occasionally would see on Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, it just went crazy. It went absolutely, it went crazy. And you know what? It was amazing. Like, I remember watching the video myself probably like 3 or 4 times because I was just like, Jesus Christ, this is immense. And it was just awesome. And it was probably one of the best ways that they could have led into kind of like, the hard to kill sort of build. It was that start to the hard to kill build. And I think it was one of the best ways they could have done it. It was just
Absolutely.
outstanding.
Mhm.
Absolutely outstanding. So obviously, you know, we had a few things going on there. I'm just trying to think some of the other things that were going on. We had just effectively had most of that was effectively, yeah, most of it was really kind of Sami. But at this time, there was a lot of stuff going on. I mean, you know, Jake and Fulton, not so much Dave, but he was including a few little scuffles because he was in a match in New York actually. Thinking about it, there was
Mhm.
I think there was a 6-man or a 3-way tag match or something that was going on. OVE again lost. So what we were talking about before, you know, you go back quite a long way and start seeing this whole losing streak. And it does go right back to probably sort of maybe before Bound for Glory. You know, I'm not sure. It's quite a long way, isn't it?
I feel like what tapings? It was the Philly tapings. What was it, last year? That that the whole storyline kind of started with Tessa, because originally they were like picking on Scarlett, I remember, and she came in and defended her. And I feel like around that time is when they started kind of like a losing streak. Maybe a little before that. I mean, don't quote me, but it's definitely been a while, but without being recognized in the storyline.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
and that's the thing, and that's what we were talking about earlier with this whole kind of like planting the seed, um, because you know obviously all of that was going on. You've got the odd, you know, you start getting these losses. We start getting to see that you know maybe not all as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, getting the build up. Sami, you know, obviously ends up winning the world title. You know, again they're still losing. They're still losing
Yeah.
stuff. You know, which is building up. You know, these, you know, we're not talking a handful of matches now. You know, we're talking, you know, double figures in the amount of
Yeah,
matches. It
months.
seems, yeah, they're starting to lose quite a lot. And that's sort of kind of slowly building. And then obviously we lead into 2020 with OVE. Now, other than, you know, Sami at this point they are continuing to lose matches. You know, however, they were still dirty heels. They were still being scummy, and they were still very positive in everything that they were doing. Um, but wherever they could, of course, you know, the promo work was still gold. Everything
Mm.
they do, you know, on camera, on the mic, especially, is still superb. You know, and never disappointing. I always look forward to an OVE or a Sami Callihan promo. Um, no matter what, I just think they're great.
They're
Um,
so
so
good.
they're just so good. They are clean. You know, he never puts a word wrong. There's never a
Mhm.
or an ah or a, you know, or a pause where he's thinking about what he's going to say, or you know, it just flows. It just,
Yes.
you know, everything just comes out like it's you know, it's not been at all thought about. It's just all coming out. You know, it's just
Mhm.
fluid. You know, and I think that's great. Now, so we get to Hard to Kill. Now, this is an interesting pay-per-view actually, and I think it's very significant because at Hard to Kill we see Ken Shamrock, obviously, because we had
Mhm.
that build at the New York tapings where we had that to where Madman goes mental and starts kicking the crap out of Ken, don't we, and throwing him out of the ring and all sorts of stuff. There's actually a bit in that moment actually that I wanted to hit with Madman Fulton. Now, as we hit on earlier, he is a very imposing human being. I mean, he is massive, right? And to the extent that, you know, he literally just steps over the top rope and gets in the ring. He's that big. I mean, he's huge.
Yeah.
So, so, and Ken, in reality, I mean, Ken's probably about my height, maybe 6 foot, maybe. You know, and he's pretty thick. He's a, you know, a solid guy for his age. He's incredibly fit. You can't
Yeah.
take that away from him. He's stacked. But Madman Fulton threw him around like a rag doll.
Yes.
Um, and
Yeah.
that kind of, yeah, I mean, that was just ridiculous. Um, all that happened. There's one point where he literally throws him through the ropes onto the floor. You got Sami coming out trying to hold him back a little bit, and then all of a sudden, from nowhere, he literally just flies over the top rope and lands on the floor. So so if you think about it, the reality of that is that he is. So the height of that's got to be. So you're talking the ring's probably about 4 foot up, and then probably another. So you're talking that's probably about 8 foot, right?
Yeah.
So he jumps over the top rope and lands 8 or 9 foot down on the floor on his feet, right? Like something out of a superhero movie, right?
Yeah, no, it was at that moment I realized they may have been underutilizing Madman Fulton.
Oh, I mean, good God. And, I mean, you saw the look on Ken's face. I think Ken absolutely shit himself when that happened because Jesus Christ. Yeah, that was a one intense moment. That was one intense moment from Madman Fulton. And I'll always remember that as long as I live. It was incredible. However, we get to Hard to Kill and he loses to Ken.
Yes.
And he also had Dave and Jake in his corner. So OVE at that point is Dave and Jake and Madman Fulton. That's their moment for the pay-per-view. And they lose. So Madman loses even though he's got Jake and Dave in his corner to help, if and when needed. He still lost the match. So there's your first, for me, that's a massive loss. Really big, right? So this is where it's a bad night for OVE because obviously later on we've then got the world title match. So OVE still, they've still got Sami with the gold, and it's still a good night, and it's going to be an amazing match. They get there, it's an amazing match, but he loses. So on that night, Hard to Kill, an incredible pay-per-view. I really enjoyed it. OVE lose everything. Literally everything, right? So they've now not got a world champion. Madman loses with Jake and Dave in the corner. That's it. In that moment, OVE in reality is dead.
Yes.
And I think that people didn't realise it. And I don't think until I was doing a little bit of research today and I was looking through different bits and bobs, and the realization hit me that they lost everything that day. Everything lost that day, right? And then, of course, after that, we still had a few sets to tape. We had Sam's Town. I think we had the Mexico tapings and stuff.
Yeah.
They were losing. You know what I mean? Sami had disappeared. In this moment, Sami's gone, off doing whatever he was doing at that point. Nobody really knows. We just got that hint of the whole, you're not going to see me coming stuff. That was pretty much it. And of course, OVE are left thinking, well, what's going on? Sami's gone. He's not talking to any of us. So they're almost kind of like, left without a leader, I guess you could say. I mean, Dave insists that Sami wasn't the leader, just the one that spoke the loudest. But so that's kind of where we're left in terms of the story as such. They're sort of kind of implying that OVE are now lost, I guess. And then basically we just see them continuing to lose, continuing to have a bad time. And then of course, we eventually get up to the, we see a bit more of a build on the ICU gimmick, don't we? So, and then of course in the Sam Stones taping in Vegas, we get the return of Sami as ICU, which, of course we were all expecting that, even though we wanted it, not to be Sami. I personally didn't want it to be Sami. I honestly wanted it to be someone else. I was still hoping that Sami was going to be OVE and come back and be even more intense and bring the boys back, and you know what I mean. Just sort of rally the troops.
But
he came back. ICU. He was clearly dissing the boys a little bit. They were still confused, not sure what was going on. That then led us up to Rebellion Part 1, which was obviously the very first taping with no audience, wasn't it? It was the
Yes.
whatever you want to, yeah. And we had the match with Sami and Ken Shamrock. Of course, the boys interfered. That's when Sami said, look, clearly he'd had enough, and he turned on his boys, didn't he? He turned on his boys.
Heartbreaking
Moment for OVE fans. But Sami was done. Now, when you think about it, this has obviously been coming for a long time, okay? Because they were never going to keep Sami. You know, Sami is a singles guy, right?
Yeah.
He's a true singles star, and will go on to be, you know, huge in the industry. He will be huge and remembered for being like one of the best heels, one of the best pro wrestlers in Impact history, I believe. Now, and he will go on to achieve what he wants to achieve, which is like, you know, I'm the savior of Impact or whatever it is. He wants to be the man known for bringing Impact back from the dead, kind of thing. But we all know that. We've seen that. He's documented. You know, that's what he wants to do.
Facts.
So exactly. So obviously he turns on the boys, you know, with his baseball bat, laying them all out, and then going on to end up to, I don't know whether you can say he lost the match. I don't think he did really, because he didn't tap out. He just fainted.
He passed out. They kind of played it safe and kind of just let him pass out from the pain.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, it's a way of kind of, yeah, like you say, you know, keeping Sami strong, because at the end of the day, he didn't officially lose. He didn't. He just passed out from the pain of the world's strongest man's ankle lock, which in reality is very easy to get out of. Even my grandma could probably get out of one of those. But the bottom line is, yeah, he couldn't get out of it, and he passed out from the pain. So obviously Sami's gone. He's doing his thing. The boys are now left in disbelief. What the hell's going on? You know, it's all going to shit. You know, what are we going to do next? Of course, what do we then see? Madman Fulton's gone.
Yeah.
We're never down. He's gone off with Crazy Steve or whatever it is he's doing. He's just gone off. He's gone. And he's pissed off at the boys because, again, he's got the boys in his corner, and, you know, he still ends up losing. You know, even though he's got what would be classed as a difference maker in his corner to help him out as and when needed, he still loses. So he's pissed off, and he said, "Fuck over here, I'm gone." Right. So off he goes. So we're now like literally a couple of shows later, and you know, we are now looking at just 2. So we're down as 2, the original 2, and we're thinking, you know, and I must admit at this point, I'm thinking, okay, OVE back to a tag team. This is probably the best move, right? This is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, yeah, you know, we're gonna, you know, Jake and Dave, OVE tag team, yeah, great addition to the tag, you know, the tag division. Because the tag division at the moment, how good is that? But anyway, that's another story. But so yeah, so that I thought maybe that's what they were going to do. So anyway, no, that's not happening, is it? That's not happening at all, because Joey Ryan comes along, or Joseph P. Ryan comes along, and yeah, throws a spanner in the works. So he gets the boys in his corner, you know, for his match, and he gets out there. He has his match, you know. He ends up winning his match with a little bit of help from the boys, and before you know it, Jake's turned on Dave. Takes him with a roundhouse kick, right? Takes him out with a roundhouse kick, and as Dave rightly so tweeted the other day, and then there was one.
Yeah.
And, you know, so it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens now with Dave, because I think we can safely say that OVE is now OVR.
Yeah, I think it is safe to say. But as sad and disappointing as it is, I have high hopes for everybody in the directions that they're going from here. There's more character builds that we can expect. Like, I'm not really sure how Jake's going to turn out being paired with cancel culture, but I just know with Dave Crist that the King of Dayton will rise again.
Yes, definitely, without doubt. I know that Dave is. I think there's so much more to come from Dave. Obviously his back injury prevented him from kind of doing more than he could have done up to this point. But he's fixed now. He's strong. He's back to full fitness. So you're right. I think the King of Dayton's going to be back. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Jake, like you say, with cancel culture. I mean, I don't know what's going to go on with that with regards to RVD and Big Ass. I forgot her name.
Katie Forbes, please.
Yeah,
Well, it's gotten so dark and culty. So, Joseph P. Ryan, I never thought I'd see such a dark character come from him, and he is playing it to a point.
He's doing really well. Yeah, he's doing really. But it's going to be interesting to see how all of that pans out. I mean, I don't know whether Rob and Katie were at the last set of tapings. I believe they were. So it will be interesting to see how that now starts to unfold, because now you've introduced Jake in there. I mean, obviously RVD and Katie. I mean, I was really surprised that those two actually stopped doing like video, vignettes and stuff like that. Just to keep them involved a little bit, as they are supposedly obviously involved in a storyline already. But maybe they just didn't need to do it. Maybe Joey was doing a great job, so just crack on with that. You may find that actually RVD and Katie are no longer part of cancel culture, and it's now going to be Joey and Jake.
It could be, because from the looks of it, she didn't look very cancel culture from her little behind the scenes photos. Not like it's any big deal. I love Katie Forbes, but
she's definitely one for the books. So that's for sure. So I think she's done well taking over she did well taking over from that kind of Scarlet Bordeaux role initially. I think she actually done a better job of it.
Well, the thing with that I always felt is that with Katie, you can tell there's natural confidence there. She's older than Kate or Scarlet was too, but with Scarlet, I always felt it was very forced, and it didn't quite necessarily ever click. It's just like, oh, here I'm hot, whereas Katie's like, hey, I'm hot, duh.
Check me out. Yeah, exactly.
She's fun. She's so much fun.
So it's going to be extremely interesting on how everything pans out now. I think now I'm going to throw something out here now. Some of the big stuff that's coming in the future, I think, is going to involve Sami, in terms of they're going to be he's going to be bringing them in. That makes sense. So I know that, I know there's lots of people that think that EC3 is coming back. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think that's happening. I think I think he's definitely AEW bound. Yeah, I think that's definitely not happening. I do think EY is going to be coming back, but I think that'll be something which gets introduced into a potential Team Canada type thing going on. But I think we could see Sami bringing in the likes of, the Good brothers, Carl and Doc. I could see them. I could see Gallows, Gallows and Carl Anderson getting involved there. Because I think actually between those three of them, they could create, like a better version of the Bullet Club kind of thing, but using the ICU gimmick as the cement
base,
of creating that. I don't know. I could be wrong there, but I think that could work. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think it's Rusev.
Oh. That you mean as far as people who are actually signing with the company?
Yeah, I think the
Yeah,
big one's going to be Rusev.
I would
think.
like to. I think he was a really good character. On the other product, I never really like to pitch the other names when we're
Now,
talking about Impact, but he seems like he's got such a sense of humor to him, and he's a really dedicated wrestler that it would be a nice addition to the Impact roster.
yeah, I don't know. I just have a feeling that's who it is. The big one, the one that
Mhm.
everyone's going to go, wow, never expected it, because so many people are going, oh, it's EC3. I don't know. I don't know.
Red
I think,
herring.
yeah, I think it's a red herring. I'm not saying, I tell you, the interesting thing is I don't think that the stuff that he released is a dig at Impact. I think it's him riding off the back of Impact, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
So
yeah, exactly.
yeah, I don't think he's a dig at all. But his reference to basically, the nostalgia and stuff like that, that's him saying that's not happening. Get over it, kind of thing. I think. But anyway,
Yeah. I mean,
that's
he could be right, he could be wrong. Who knows? We'll just have to
no,
patiently wait and see.
we're just gonna have to wait and see, aren't we? And that's the thing. And that's the beauty about Impact at the moment, is because people aren't at the tapings, nothing's getting leaked. You got no
Yeah,
idea.
yeah, no spoilers.
So that's good.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I think we need to leave it there because yeah, I mean we're well over an
We're all
hour
caught
now.
up.
You know, we're all caught up to date. So yeah, so all that's left to say really is make sure that you give this video a thumbs up, leave a comment. We'd love to answer all of your comments. So please, if there's anything that we've missed or anything that you want to touch base on, or you want to discuss a little bit more, or you've got some ideas on where things are going, then please don't hesitate to leave us a comment because we would love to discuss it. So any thoughts on the characters, any thoughts on us, please feel free to leave anything you like. If it's your first listen, then don't forget to head over to the Total Nonstop Impact YouTube channel. Give us a sub, smash the bell to never miss a listen. Also, why not follow Tni on Twitter at We Talk Impact? So that's obviously worth doing as well. Alicia, why don't you tell the Impact Tribe, Impacted Tribe, where you can find yourself on socials?
Oh yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter under the handle of Alicia B. Cakey. All one word.
Okay. So don't forget to head over there and give Alicia a follow. If you're looking, if you want to find me, the Bison, I'm on Twitter at Bison45. I'm very active on Twitter. I do like to talk about Impact Wrestling in particular. I do like to share everything and try and promote the guys as much as I possibly can. So yeah, no, if you want to talk to me, then feel free. That's not a problem. So all that's left to say now is a huge thank you to the First Lady of TNI, Alicia, for
Thank
joining me
you.
today. Thank you very much for that. And I've been Bison. That's been Alicia, and this has been episode 16 of Impacted.